All right, so let's get into it. So this is the recap of the Unbound 200, which Alex and Justin participated in. First off, we need to apologize for the delayed release of this. There's just been a lot going on. We had some audio issues, and I have been moving across country, so we can place the blame on me. And but here we are. Let's get into the recap. Just to remind everybody what Unbound is and what we were doing here. Um, Unbound 200 is a 202-mile gravel cycling race through the Midwest tallgrass prairie, starting in Emporia, Kansas. This thing is a completely relentless grind. It's 92% gravel, continuous rolling hills. It covers, like I said, over 202 miles, and it's just under 12,000 feet of climbing. So what that means is it is just a grind fest and a hammer fest. A truly awesome event, really just showcasing human potential, human endeavor, but most importantly, what a type 1 diabetic is capable of. And right now, I guess if you want to listen to episode, what would be the second episode we recorded, where we kind of talked about the preparation of what Alex and Justin did leading into the race. Go back and give that a listen because it has been a few weeks now. But this is the recap of how the race went for these two guys. So let's get into it. Justin, I'd love to hear your race, but first, let's get into your nutrition plan. I think with this being a diabetes podcast, listeners are going to be really curious about you know hearing you walk us through what your pre race nutrition was. So like night before, morning of, and then what was the game plan for nutrition? While you were on the bike racing for, what was the over 10 hours?
A little under 10,
So
thankfully.
a little under 10. Okay, well, still, I mean that's amazing. Like I'm thinking like 202, calculating what would it be for me? That'd be an all day, sunrise to sundown. So yeah, let's get into it, Justin. Let's hear about your nutrition
It's a long day for sure. And yeah, nutrition wise, this is Unbound being such a long and arduous race, basically from mile one. It kind of boils down to an eating contest, more or less, so that you can be able to put out the amount of power and energy expenditure that you need from the first minute of the race through the last minute of the race, which are usually separated by 8, 9, 10 plus hours. For racing, like especially in the elite category now, high carb movement is it's all the rage for a reason because it works, and the more you eat, the more you can output for longer duration. And in practice, in training, this is something I see all the time, something I'm putting in place in other races as well. So my goal for this race was to consume 150 grams of carbohydrate per hour through a mix of drink mixes, gel mixes. Actually, that was probably going to be it. It was going to be almost entirely liquid food in one form or another, just so that I could be able to stomach the sheer amount of calories and carbohydrates I needed over 9 to 10 hours. I was kind of estimating about 9.5 hours of race time for me. And what's that put it at? Almost 1,500 grams of carbohydrates for the entire duration of the race. Um, Night before, have probably an early dinner, early for me, about 6:30. Pretty carb heavy meal, basically just carbs, protein, nothing more. No vegetables, no fiber. So it's purely what I need, nothing else. It also moves through you pretty quickly. So like race morning, you're able to not feel the bloat quite as much. As long as you like time it right with the like removing fiber from your diet and in like the 24 to 48 hours before the race. So yeah, basically carbs and protein all day Friday for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then breakfast Saturday, or yeah, this was Saturday morning at like 3:30 a.m. Our race started at 5. Was it 5:50, 5:45, something ridiculously early. So I made all my food the night before and woke up at 3 so that I could wake up, check my blood sugar, take enough insulin for this pretty much exclusively carbohydrate breakfast of pancakes and a couple boiled eggs and a bunch of coffee at 3. I woke up at 3 a.m. so that I could check the blood sugar, dose in time, so that I could eat around 3:30, and that would give me enough time to digest the food, remove any like questionability of if any insulin spikes or blood sugar spikes that I saw at the beginning of the race were from breakfast or from adrenaline, so I could try and eliminate that post breakfast spike as much as possible by giving that time frame. And yeah, that was basically a day of just eating a lot of carbs was what the goal was. What actually happened was a little different, unfortunately.
Well, so how are you managing that amount of sugar? So you kind of give us the rundown of what you're going to try to consume, kind of your, night before, morning of, on race. I mean, that's just like blows my mind because that's a ton of sugar. And so it's definitely something that I don't think a lot of type 1 diabetics probably think about while they're going into an endurance event, because there is this element of managing insulin now to, shuttle that sugar where it needs to go. So what kind of protocols are you on for insulin delivery? Just kind of curious how you're getting the insulin into your body, and also tell us a little bit about like your adjustments leading into race day. I'm curious if you, with that much sugar, if you're are you bringing your insulin delivery up from like just a normal day? Are you bringing it down? Like I'm just kind of curious what you do, Justin.
Yeah, definitely. So I do use a tubed insulin pump that is on me 24 hours a day, every day. And for like honestly for most gravel races, most of these big 1 day events, whether it's 5 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, however long, I am coming into the race pretty fresh. So I don't have that much fatigue. So my insulin sensitivity is not that high usually on the day before the race and especially on race morning, just because my body's super fresh. I don't have residual training in the body. It's not like day 6 of a stage race where the smallest amount of insulin is going to just tank your blood sugar. So I am upping my insulin intake the day before the race, and especially for that race morning breakfast, just from years and years of experience of knowing what different levels of accumulated fatigue will do to my blood sugar. So insulin is I'm probably taking more insulin for my pre-race morning breakfast than I do for any other day of training during the week. And I am also, so the goal is to have 150 grams of carb per hour from hour one, but first hour of the race you're still super fresh. You don't have any accumulated fatigue from the effort of the event because it just started. And there's also the adrenaline spike or the blood sugar spike from adrenaline. So, which you probably shouldn't use to base dosing decisions off of, but kind of we'll get into that a little bit later based on what happened in my race. But I am supplementing the first several hours of the race. While I'm eating food, I am taking additional insulin at that time, and that amount is that I vary that varies race to race, effort to effort, because the first hour of the race might be super easy and super chill, and we're not doing anything and just riding very easy recovery pace in a big group ride. Unbound was not that, so I was still taking insulin or attempting to take insulin, and but at a marginally lower dose than I would if the race was super easy. But that being said, just point blank, first I was planning to consume or administer additional insulin in the first 2 to 3 hours of the race so that I could have the first 450 grams of carbohydrates of my day and not really worry about my blood sugar just going through the roof.
Justin, when you say you're fresh, the way I'm hearing that is that your muscles aren't starving for energy at this point. Is that kind of what you mean by when you say you're fresh? So
Exactly.
you are giving yourself an amount of insulin based on kind of a recovered kind of muscles or topped off state, versus as the race goes on and those muscles start to become in need of energy, your body becomes more sensitive. So
Yep.
that's kind of what I hear. I just wanted to confirm that.
Exactly.
And then to Justin's point on this race, I watched it from my kitchen. It was absolutely just blistering fast. The Unbound 200 is gaining a ton of notoriety, and Justin was in the pro field, and this field is attracting top talent from all over the world, from the UCI Pro Tour level, and it was pretty remarkable to watch the pace at which you guys were moving along. So, so Justin, how did it end up going for you? What
Yes.
were
Yeah.
what was the results?
Yeah, so race wise, I had the plan in place. I had the bike setup in place. We actually showed up a little bit late because there was rain in the forecast, and that kind of dwindled off in the 2 days before the race, and everything dried up. And conditions on race day were absolutely perfect. I was super confident in my fueling strategy, super confident in my bike setup. I did this race the year prior, so like I kind of on this same exact course, so I knew what to expect. I knew where the sections to be like in position were, and like knew where the big efforts were going to come. But my big goal for the race was to be in the breakaway at the beginning of the day. As this race is getting bigger, so is the coverage of the race, and they had a live stream of the race. There's a lot of media coverage just of the race in general, and I wanted to be one of the players in the race. Even if I didn't think I could get a top result, I still wanted to be one of the guys that was there racing, and not just trying to finish. So start the race, move up. First 30 minutes of the race, like feeling good, feeling all right. Like my blood sugar's going up because it's the start of the race. Had food, start trying to give insulin, and like kind of like about this time, about 30 minutes into the race, my insulin pump just starts like blaring an alarm at me. And I pull it out and I see that it shows that the pump side is blocked and there's an occlusion in the pump, so I'm not receiving any insulin from my pump. I try to clear the alarm, administer a little bit of insulin so that I can keep eating, and the alarm just does not go away. Like I tried to do this multiple times, and like there's like a couple like kind of I don't know if they're hacks or it's me just trying to override the pump, but you'll clear the alarm and then give like a small dose of insulin to like try and push it through, and like if there is something that's like clogging it like under your skin or like maybe a little kink in the tubing, maybe it's like just small enough that you can clear that blockage. And I tried to do that a couple times, but to no success at all. And the pump site was blocked, and I wasn't getting any insulin basically from 30 minutes into the race for the rest of the day. I noticed this as my blood sugar was going up, and I was trying to give insulin and was kind of in a panic mode because this is 30 minutes into a nearly 10-hour day, and my whole fueling strategy is kind of going out the window as my blood sugar goes up. I don't want to keep eating and make my blood sugar go even higher and go into like somewhere that's super dangerous. I did see the high reading on my CGM during the race, so it means blood sugar was over 400, which is not safe at all, but I did not want to risk it going any higher. And I was hopeful with the effort of the race and my goal for the race of trying to be in the breakaway and like riding much harder at the beginning of this race than just sitting in, I would hopefully be able to achieve that muscle depletion and that need for my body to start using those carbohydrates without insulin a little bit sooner in the race than not. And unfortunately, that did not happen. I ended up not consuming any carbohydrates after the first 30 minutes until 4.5, 5 hours in. It was just purely water. Yeah, it was just purely water from up until about the halfway point before my blood sugar got back into a range where I felt comfortable eating and drinking all of the carb heavy gel mixes and drink mixes I had on me, which is rather unfortunate. I didn't actually manage to make it into a little breakaway. I think we got like 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes up front before we were absorbed by the field, and then like another breakaway went and they got absorbed, and I think the lead two broke away like sometime shortly after that, probably 2 hours into the race, and started really pressing on the gas. And I was feeling very, very bad. Obviously, I rode hard at the beginning of the race, but my blood sugar was also really high, which it's hard to explain, but it's this internal stuffiness. Like your legs are heavy in ways they shouldn't be heavy. It's like kind of the onset of a cramp, but not the onset of a cramp at the same time. You just feel bad, and it's not really a recipe for riding fast or hard for another 9 hours. Yeah, ended up, yeah, so started eating halfway through the race, just kind of rolling through groups at the end of the day. Finished in 69th place, about 10 minutes faster than last year, surprisingly.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, I was not. I honestly thought going into the first aid station I was going to have to call it a day, but the guys I had in the aid station, they were they were there to help me, and they did exactly that to the best I could ever imagine. Yeah, and ended up finding groups to ride in all day, and would ride until I blew up, and then get caught by another group, and then ride until I blew up, and then I could start eating, and I felt all right, and but it was too late, and yeah, it's a whole saga, but that's part of it.
Yeah, man, that's gosh, it's so frustrating to hear because it sounds like you were on really good form. A couple of things that pop out to me when you're telling that story. One is that it's really cool to have the knowledge that insulin can absorb sugar without insulin. Like that's the one system in the body that can absorb sugar. So having muscle, being fit is a huge thing, and having that knowledge to where you know that okay, I don't have to quit. I just need to be patient. I have to change my expectations because obviously my fueling plan is totally different now, and I'm at 400, and so my legs are blown, and you just have to be patient and kind of suffer through it. But man, super cool that you stuck with it and still ended up going 10 minutes faster than last year. Pretty remarkable. And, it's not the result you wanted. It's definitely, the technology we have access to with the CGMs and the pumps are remarkable. But to remember and to know that there is error that does happen with those and frustration that comes along with it. But it's just the game we have to play as type 1 diabetics. And so, but hey, man, awesome job. That's a really cool story. And I'm sure if we wanted to spend some more time, there's probably some lessons learned from things you could do different next time. I think Justin offline we talked a little bit about maybe would it make sense to take like an insulin pen with you just in case of something like this happening. But it's a tough thing to call, right? Because it's like, how often has this happened in races for you? It probably just doesn't happen that often.
Yeah,
Like
this is
where you
this
get
will
an
be
occlusion,
yeah, second time.
yeah, you get an occlusion
Yep.
right after the race starts, and it's just that doesn't happen that often. It's
Yep.
such a bummer. So, yes, could have you taken an insulin pen with you as a backup? Sure, but I mean, come on, it's like at the end of the day, you just have to like go with the plan and hope for the best.
Yep.
That's awesome though, man. So,
Same.
Alex, we'll switch over to you. So Alex took his approach to Unbound 200 a little bit different because as you listened in episode two, that he's a not a professional bike racer anymore, and doesn't does have a full time job and a daughter, and just trying to figure out how to do this on the side. And but I think that's awesome because it that's where we're all at, right? I mean, I'm a father and don't have a lot of time to train, but have different goals, and I set different challenges for myself as a type 1 diabetic. That's really essential. So Alex, walk us through your nutrition plan. I want to hear what you did the night before, morning of, and then what your plan was on the bike, and then get into the insulin delivery strategy, like what you're using and what you're what kind of adjustments you're making for the race.
Yeah, I mean, Justin pretty much said the kind of the key points there, right? Night before, eating pretty carb heavy meals, basically loading up on the glycogen stores as much as you possibly can, right? Just to prep for the race the next day. My goals obviously were not the same as Justin's. My goal was like, let's see how good I can do given the has been nature of my cycling career and the limited time for training. But you know, I think the really cool part, like, was the whole process leading up to Unbound, which we kind of talked about before, was just all the experimentation on like, how does this work now, and with the new fueling strategies and things like that, and working my way up to getting to like 120 grams an hour. So definitely not at the 150 level, but 150 grams an hour level, but was trying to get pretty close to that. I think overall on the day of the race, I managed to put down, I think, 115 grams of carbs an hour average, and my finish time was significantly slower than Justin's at about 13 and a half hours, due to some, I'll call it some other, for some other circumstances. But what's really cool, it was absolutely not the diabetes thing that got in my way during Unbound. It was my lack of time to prepare appropriately, I would say, is a better way of describing that. Yeah, so I'm using an open source looping tool connected. I got my Omnipod Dash and my Dexcom for CGM. It's just all routed through my phone, which, you have to carry your phone on these big events just in case, in case of emergency, right? So it's going to be with me anyway. Plus, I figured if I was going to be out there for 12 plus hours, I would definitely want some headphones to like distract myself from, you know just listening to wind blowing for so long. So
Well,
every
if you're like me, you're going to be taking the phone out to take some photos as well.
Oh yeah, oh
I mean, come on,
yeah.
you're out there for 13 hours, man. You gotta take some photos of that beautiful Midwest prairie grass.
There were definitely some photos of me just looking completely dejected at one of the water oases, just like going like, "What am I possibly doing?" And then feeling a little more recovered. Me and one guy would ride for a while. We took a few selfies just to commemorate the suffering. But anyway, all to say, the phone's going to be with me no matter what. So it's kind of a cool thing to be able to just tether my diabetes management to my phone. So what I did is I have this exercise profile on there, which I adjust my insulin to carb ratio and my insulin sensitivity ratios pretty significantly. Basically, when you're riding, right? Like when I'm normally 1 unit drops me 50 points or so. Like when I'm riding, it's a lot closer to 1 to 200, you know, ish. But obviously, the intensity that you're riding at changes that and things like that. So, you know, over the months leading into that, I spent like every ride just trying to kind of dial it, right? Like, hey, if I'm riding at this intensity level, but what happens if I ride at this intensity for a long period of time? What happens to this? What happened to my blood sugars, and how many carbs did I eat, and things like that. So I came into the race with the strategy of bolusing for most of the carbs that I was consuming over the first, I think, 4 hours of the ride. And the idea behind that was, since insulin turns off your glycogen response, that's going to kind of force my body to like use the carbs that I'm ingesting instead of trying to store them for later, and then ideally save my glycogen for later, which honestly I think worked out really really well. I keep going back to my graph. My average blood sugar on the day was 160, I believe, and that included like a 2 hour window where I bolus a lot less for breakfast because that's my strategy. I like to bolus less for breakfast just because I hate the idea of going low at the start. If I was doing this more often, I'd probably feel a little bit more confident with you know a more accurate amount of, or a more applicable amount of insulin. But you know, so I spiked my blood sugars, got in the car. There's some adrenaline on the 3 or 4:30 a.m. drive because we were staying about an hour away. So I started up when we arrived. I was about 350, and it was slowly going downhill a little bit. But at the start of the race, I was still like almost 300, 250, something like that. So even with those 2 hours in there, having that average blood sugar be so like normal felt pretty cool. Like the graph that I've got, and I'm gonna do a write up on this as well, just so I can actually share some of these images because I just think it's cool. Maybe I'm just proud of it. I don't know. But it's pretty much a flat line, and you can kind of see where the blood sugars uptick just a little bit, showing when my body really started kicking out that glycogen. And it was just kind of cool. But ultimately in the race, nothing could be totally perfect. We started out really fast. There was like 15 crashes, I think, in the first like 30 miles. It was an absolute crash fest. One guy crashed in corner number one, and his bike ran into me. That was cool. He literally rode himself into a ditch. So that set the precedence for the race. So I was a little hesitant on some of those muddy descents that we got into because it's just like watching people crash left and right. And it was just like, okay, you know what? The fastest way to end my race is to also crash. So caused a few splits there. Was with a great group. We rolled through the first aid station, just cruising. Or you know, I'm gonna call it cruising. Justin would probably be like, "Dude, you guys are going slow," but that's neither here nor there. Uh, but then the heat rolled in, and the winter and the spring that we had in Denver, just that was my biggest gap. I think was just training for the heat, and it absolutely cracked me. I think mile 80 to 110 I was like riding at 12 miles an hour through those hills. It was just brutal. So ultimately, I had hoped to finish in under 12 hours. I was 13 and a half hours, and I spent about 90 minutes at aid stations. So, so
I mean,
yeah.
Alex, that's, I mean, you don't downplay that. Riding 200 miles on continuous rolling gravel roads in the heat, that is no joke. I mean, that is just no joke at all. Like 100 miles, I always think 100 miles is a is an achievement. To double that and on that course is just remarkable. So, um,
Well,
great job, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of the experience. I'm looking forward to doing it again. Hopefully next year. I gotta get in. I have a lottery I have to go through, so TBD. But and I have to convince my wife that I should dedicate enough time to training again because big props to her, right? On being like, you know what? Yeah, feel free to go work a full time job and also train for this insane race, and then go do it. So I think that's another cool thing. Just that support system there. They were at the aid stations for me, and I got to tell you, one of the best things leaving the aid station when you're just feeling like absolute crap is your 3-year-old, or I guess almost 3-year-old, running up and being like, "Bye, Daddy," and giving you a hug before you leave. You're like, you know what? I better hurry up and get to the finish so I can get another one of those. But anyway,
That's awesome, man. One of the things I really loved about your story, and I think is so valuable, and I found to be such a great approach to anybody trying to figure out their diabetes management, especially in sport and events like this, is that trial and error process that you put yourself through. You had an idea, but then you really refined it. You just like refined it and refined it. You just went out on rides and you were really focused on, okay, what do I need to do for my settings at this intensity? What do I need to do at this, maybe a lesser intensity? What if I stack volume onto that? What happens? And so like that mindset and that approach to the race is so valuable. And so it's like a really great thing to share. I just wanted to reiterate that because I heard that and I was like, yeah, it's like exactly what you needed to be doing, and I mean the results showed.
yeah, I mean, I think I appreciate that too, right? Because I think it's what you have to do with everything, right? Like nobody knows how to do something just the moment. Maybe some people do, I don't know, but I sure as heck don't know how to just immediately jump into something and be great at it, right? Like it takes me a lot of effort to understand what the problem is, understand what I'm trying to accomplish, and things like that. Like even just the process of training myself to consume 120 grams of carbs an hour, right? Like I had to learn that you know what, as much as the gels don't taste that great, I mean they're not bad, but they're way easier to consume than oatmeal cream pies. The oatmeal cream pies are delicious. This is just like trial and error there, right? Like how can I
Well,
consume this? What do I have to do?
well, totally. And then and type 1 diabetes, it's very individualized too. The way my body responds to certain foods are going to be similar but slightly different. And same with training efforts. Same with what happens when you put these different stressors into the system. How are my nerves before race compared to your nerves, and that's going to have a different effect when it comes to the adrenaline in the morning. Our pre race. I mean, is what I'm trying to say. And so it is all very individual. So you can kind of take the guidelines, but you have got to do the trial and error and just kind of refinement, find out how your body's gonna work.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be pushing yourself to some athletic extreme, or I mean, really anything, if you're going to be pushing yourself in any way, you really have to just understand how you're going to respond to that because what is it that was it Mike Tyson or whatever said like a plan is great until you get punched in the face. You get in there and like something's going to happen that you didn't account for, and if you've experimented and done that trial and error enough, I mean,
It sounds like you're speaking to Justin's race.
Yeah,
ha! You might think that, but that's absolutely not true. Only because you should have seen my blood sugars yesterday. I think David, you and I were talking a little bit earlier
Yeah.
this morning, where my everything was just wrong, and it just like I could not get it sorted.
But I mean, that's the reality of living with type 1 diabetes. I mean, that's kind of the fun of it, right? Is to know that like you're gonna miss, you're gonna have misses, you're gonna have highs. I saw yes, yeah, I saw some highs today as well. But hey, man, you keep moving forward and figuring it out and learning how to correct and respond to those moments. Um, well, awesome, guys. Stoked to hear how the race went. I think there's some really valuable content that you shared. I think that's the value of this podcast is to tune in and listen and hear how people living with type 1 diabetes are getting after it and managing their type 1 diabetes in the process. I'm looking at my watch because I'm looking at where my blood sugars are. I love ending these podcasts with who's got the best blood sugars. I think I'm gonna lose today. I'm looking at it. I'm 180 arrow going straight across, so a little higher than I would have liked, but hey, it's good. It's okay.
better than me. I'm 213 arrow across right now. Oh, I think Alex
150.
we're all a bit off the mark, but hey, you win, Alex.
Hey, you know what?
Congratulations, buddy.
Maybe I was preparing, knowing that we were going to have this conversation today, and knowing we were going to end with this, and just being like, well, my wife brought home a donut from when she went to the coffee shop. So how do I make sure that by the time we have this, I'm not 300?
There is something to that little fun competition amongst fellow type ones, man. Who's gonna have the better sugar at the moment of the challenge. Well, cool guys. Thanks for your time. Yeah. Till next time.
Till next time. Thanks for listening, y'all.